Chapter 51-52. Thanks, Videl. Gohan supported his injured friend as they settled to the ground. I still have nightmares about Broly, and that was just self-defense. I don't know if I'd have been able to live with myself if I'd killed someone when I didn't have to. Even if he did deserve it. Well, in the end, I guess he just couldn't live with the knowledge that he'd been beaten, shown mercy, even. At this, Videl seemed to lose her strength, and slumped against Gohan's shoulder. You. She mumbled. You're a good guy, Gohan, never lose that. It was strange, Gohan realized. He was in his Super Saiyan 2 form, but able to think clearly. The anger wasn't gone, it wasn't full mastery of the form like he'd achieved with the first level, but it was diminished, bubbling quietly in the back of his mind, no longer overriding everything. A sound to his right brought him out of his daze, crumbling rock. Two figures smashed down through the ceiling, tumbling to the floor and leaving a sizable impact crater as they skidded along, finally coming to a halt. Gohan shielded his eyes as the dust settled. Zarbon? Indeed it was he, the reformed alien soldier was crouched atop the battered body of his mechanical opponent. Cacao was dented, scraped and burned all over, pieces of its metallic body twisted, melted and scored with jagged slashes. Beneath some of these could be seen organic body parts, flesh and blood. This was, in fact, the secret to Cacao's surprising strength, a combination of cutting-edge cybernetic enhancements and a soldier with a naturally high power level. Zarbon, though the victor, was in bad shape too. Even as he watched Zarbon deliver the finishing blow to his opponent's exposed biological face, Gohan noticed the burn marks covering most of Zarbon's left side, the lacerations adorning his body, and the bruises on his face. He stood up, stretching his muscles. Now that was a fight. I haven't fought like that for years. What about Cell and the androids? Gohan asked. Are you kidding? Zarbon laughed. That doesn't count. I never fought an opponent that I was a match for during that whole affair. There's a battle, and then there's stalling for time, or getting smacked around by some unbeatable opponent. This, he indicated the downed cyborg, was a fight, my friend. He paused. What are you looking at me like that for? Oh, sorry, Gohan said, smiling. It's just, I was thinking. What you said is true. You were pretty outmatched, and more than the rest of us, you probably could have got off planet and survived somewhere other than Earth. But you stayed and tried to fight anyway. Yeah, well. Zarbon spluttered. Look, I've lived there for a good few years. I'm allowed to be a bit fond of the place. Don't try to make a hero of me just because of something like that. Gohan grinned. Despite what he says, and what Bulma says, come to it, I'm glad to have a guy like that on our side. He's got a good heart, it just took a bit of digging to bring it out. Hey, can you take care of Videl? He asked, letting Zarbon support her. Why? The older fighter asked. Something you've got to do. Gohan nodded. I don't know how long I can maintain this Super Saiyan 2 power. I might as well take down the other ruler here while I'm at my maximum. No messing around like we did with Tolls, he's going down, and nobody else is getting hurt. What can you tell me about him? Zarbon accessed his internally stored data, still relying on the session of deep sight he'd used on the news stations. His name's Lord Slug. He's pretty despotic, by all accounts. He can't be worse than Tolls. I'm afraid so. Zarbon noted Gohan's disbelieving look. Look, I'll try and explain. To Tolls, his people were expendable, yes, but he still felt some attachment to them, they were his, and he'd still at least try and keep most of them alive, even if only so he can use them for something later. Slug just doesn't care. He just sees himself as owning the land, and if there's anybody living there they'd better stay out of his way. The people just try and lay low as much as possible, there's pretty much nothing in their lives than trying to survive from day to day. So less of a ruler, more of, well, a pirate. Or just a thug. Right. Zarbon took off. I'll take her to a hospital. You finish up quick and meet me back here. Okay. Gohan lifted off, angling his flight towards the hole Zarbon had made entering the room and soaring out into the sky. Mind if I join you? Gohan looked to the right to see Frieza gliding along next to him. The Saiyan nodded. Sure. I'm going to take down Lord Slug, that's the Namek ruling the other side of the planet. Bad? Worse than Tolls, apparently. Wow. Huh. Frieza fell silent. Do you think this is just natural? The way of the world? My father's deposed, and we come back and we've got these guys running the place just like he would. Gohan shook his head. No. Most people are better than that. They tried, you know, they had a fair government, for a while. But Vegeta's little terrorist stunt gave people like Tolls and Slug the chance to step in. So what do you hope to achieve? Frieza asked. You take these guys down, how long before it happens again? It won't. People like this are cowards at heart. After today, they'll have something solid to fear. I'm going to end the Super Saiyan as a myth, and make it real. If you say so, this sounds dangerous, Gohan. What do you mean, it vanished? Lord Slug demanded. He was over 6 feet in height, and well built even for a Namekian. He wore a yellow cloak over his dark fighting outfit, and a scar ran down the left side of his face, only partially concealed by his helmet. It's just gone, sir, the soldier said quietly, backing fearfully away from his capricious ruler. Tull's power level just dropped off the map, and another group just appeared, around the same time. One of them is literally off the charts. We can't measure it. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Slug laughed. You scared me there for a second. It's just a malfunction, Tull's and his men couldn't have died that quickly. And people don't just pop into existence, especially not with power levels we can't even measure with our heavy-duty sensors. They can detect my power level, can't they? Hell, they wouldn't even short out at old King Cold himself. There's no way anyone could be that. Comic book sound effects, while aesthetically pleasing, are rarely accurate in relation to the noise something actually makes in real life. However, the sound of Gohan and Frieza breaking through the roof of Slug's armored bunker and decelerating from supersonic speeds to a dead stop in milliseconds, generating enough heat to partially melt the stone floor beneath their feet, was definitely a BLAM. The soldier, Angela, who'd been reading the sensor reports, was the first to react. What the F? Oh, just shut up. Gohan punched him clean through the wall and into the next room. He didn't get up. Slug's eye twitched. Kill the bastard. Get both of them out of here. His 3 remaining soldiers in the room, Xian, Wings and Metamacha, began to move to attack. Kuriza's image flickered, and the soldiers collapsed, giving out gasps of pain and surprise. You. Slug growled, clenching his fists. Just who the hell do you think you are, coming in here and tearing things up like this? Don't you know who I am? You are addressing the great Lord Slug, now show some respect or prepare for oblivion. He paused. Wait a minute, you're... His eyes widened with the realization. Kuriza. The Lost Prince. A smile crossed the scheming Namekian's face. Yes, you'll be very helpful, either as a powerful ally or a valuable trophy. I might even let Blondie there escape with his life if you join me. What'll it be? Heh. Kuriza grinned. You're so used to calling the shots, it doesn't even cross your mind that you're not in control of the situation anymore. What's that supposed to mean? You're not seriously trying to stage some kind of coup here, you're mad if you think you can challenge my power. I'm even stronger than your father was, boy. Well, that makes 2 of us, then. Kuriza nodded to Gohan. 3, actually. Gohan. Want to show him? Right. Gohan flared up his ki a little, powering up to over 50% of his maximum. Yah. The stone walls cracked as shockwaves rolled out from the half-Scion's body. The power level sensor in the corner of the room crackled, stuttered, and finally exploded. Slug staggered back, in awe of Gohan's incredible power. What, who are you? Are you a god? He whispered. Almost. I'm a Super Saiyan. No, it can't be true. Slug wailed. I never believed, why me? Of all the injustice, why me? Injustice? Gohan seethed. You want to talk about injustice, you waste of oxygen. He grabbed Slug by the neck, flying back up through the roof and throwing the tyrant to the ground on the streets above. Look around you, Slug. The streets are empty. Why do you think that is? Why should I care? The Namek snapped. I don't concern myself with the masses. A higher being like you should understand that. It's because of you. Gohan trembled, trying to keep himself under control. They aren't leaving their homes anymore, they're afraid you'll kill them on sight for amusement. With reason, I assume. Slug snorted. You've sure got an overdeveloped conscience, haven't you? You think you're some kind of hero? Heh, you had me going there. You're no Super Saiyan. The bloodthirsty warrior of legend, this self-righteous kid? Give me a break. Ha! He leapt up from the floor, launching himself at Gohan, but the child's hand shot out, catching his punch mid-swing with minimal effort. You know, that'd be slightly more intimidating if I hadn't heard the same from the other guy. Now, answer me one question, did you think you could just get away with this forever? Did you honestly think nobody would care? Why should they? It's not their problem. Well, it's about to be yours. Gohan raised one fist to shut Slug up, but Kuriza put a hand on his shoulder. Hey, Gohan. Let me handle this one. You sure? Yeah. You go check how the others are doing. I'll clean up here. A few years back, my race were the oppressors and his were the heroes. I can't help seeing a bit of poetic justice here. I'll be fine, keep your ki sense sharp, and I'll show you the results of my training. Gohan nodded, powering down and taking off back towards Toll's half of the planet. Frieza is kind of strange, sometimes he talks like someone a lot older, then the next moment he's a kid again, must run in the family, I guess. Frieza turned back to Slug. Alright, let me make it plain to you what's happening. Your rule is done. You're through, and you're leaving. You don't have a choice in the matter. But I can beat you up first if it makes you feel better. Why, you? Slug leapt at Frieza, the young prince blocking his first punch. I'll never surrender. If you say so. He winced as the shockwaves rolled through his body, shaking the ground beneath him. Let's go. The fighters vanished, racing up into the air as the battle began. Gohan maintained his course away from the fight, despite his misgivings. Frieza must know what he's doing, but I can tell he's outmatched against Slug. He must have some kind of plan, or he wouldn't have been so confident. Wait, that's it. He could just about feel it at the edge of his senses, buried within Frieza's energy signature. Clever, wish you'd told me about it. Well. No need to worry, he's got it won. Frieza crashed to the ground, tumbling head over heels and melting a parked hover car with his high-speed passing as he skidded to a halt. Well? Slug hovered a few feet away, tossing his helmet to the ground, revealing the antennae beneath, and stretching his neck one way, then the next. Where's all that bravado from a minute ago? I think you said you were going to beat me up. But let me tell you, I wouldn't be here if some random group of self-righteous vigilantes could just barge in and depose me. I am Namek's lost son. No fighter can match me. I guess his ego's interfering with his memory. Frieza noted. He wasn't so confident when Gohan powered up, but then maybe he just assumes that I'm the stronger of the two. So, tell me, he said, rubbing a bruise on his face, what happened to the kind, peaceful Namekian race? Kind, peaceful. Is that what they were like on Namek? The ruler shrugged. I wouldn't know. I don't remember the place, I was sent to another world in my infancy. I see, just like Kami, they must have sent you both out to escape the cataclysm the elders spoke of. From what I've been able to gather, they sent away 2 children destined to become great warriors, super Nameks, if you will. Apparently, that power was supposed to have a corrupting influence on me, but I don't believe that. You might see it differently, but that's just a point of view. Slug cracked his knuckles. Now, I've lost a lot of soldiers today, so I'll give you one last chance to join me before I kill you. That explains a lot, actually. Frieza realized, lost in thought. Why the corrupting influence of Piccolo ever existed in Kami, he was a super Namek, too. And that must also be why they grew in power so much when they fused. Hey, don't you ignore me. Slug growled, thrusting one arm forwards. It stretched out, extending unnaturally to close the distance to Frieza, grabbing the young warrior and pulling him towards Slug. Oh. Crap. Frieza squeaked as a foot impacted with his face, knocking him flat on his back. Right. Fighting now. Thinking later. He bounced back to his feet, hopping from right to left. Okay, then, prepare to be, yelping, he jumped away as Slug fired narrow yellow energy beams from his eyes, chasing Frieza away down the street. Putting on a burst of speed, he reappeared standing on top of a water tower on the roof of the building behind Slug. Hey. Don't interrupt me when I'm introducing my ultimate technique. Surely that's the perfect time to interrupt you, Slug reasoned. Quiet, you. I'm doing something cool over here. HRRRG. Frieza's scrawny frame burst out into a bodybuilder's, armor plates sprouting over his head, chest, shoulders, lower legs and forearms. Bony spikes and blades emerged from the armor, glistening in the light of the setting sun, as his eyes took on a red glow. Finally, an armored face mask slid across his mouth and nose, obscuring his mocking expression. Well, how do you like me now? Gah. Slug choked, recognizing the change from the file on Cooler. The 5th form. Right. Pretty cool, don't you think? Proper key control made it a lot easier to accomplish, of course, as well as reducing the collateral damage and fireworks that usually accompanies my transformations, though I don't transform very much anymore, anyway. Another benefit of key awareness is being able to fully control my energy in my natural form, rendering the first 3 pretty much useless unless I suddenly develop a burning desire to bump my forehead on doorways. I'm doing it again. Fight time now. He shook his head, clearing his thoughts. Where was I? Oh. Right. He looked up to see a gigantic Lord Slug barreling towards him, having taken the opportunity Frieza's mental tangents provided to transform into his giant form, an ability seemingly shared by all evil Namekians for some reason. Avoiding the temptation to drift off on another tangent about why this might be, Frieza instead leapt into the air to avoid Slug's massive fist, which instead pulverized half a mile of road. Spinning in midair, Frieza delivered a roundhouse kick to Slug's face that knocked the monstrous tyrant flat on his back. Slug landed in the river, instantly flooding it as he displaced about as much water as a good-sized steam liner. Frieza grinned, rolling his shoulders as he tried to get used to his bulked-up form. I already gave the speech to the other guy, so, I'll just focus on kicking your ass, alright? Lord Slug pulled himself shakily to his feet. No. No, I won't lose, to this child. Spotting his target, he swung his head forwards, unleashing a wide energy beam that flattened half the street in front of him. Rhea. The dust blew away to reveal a crater several meters deep, stretching back half a mile and carving right through the river. A tiny figure faded into view. Frieza hovered at the front, arms crossed in front of his face, scorch marks dotting his body. Huh, not bad, he decided, lowering his arms and smiling behind his mask. That could have seriously injured me if I wasn't ready. I guess I was wrong to let my guard down around you. Damn it. Slug made a grab for Frieza, but the young warrior was already moving, easily evading the attempt. Frieza wheeled around, kicking Slug in the side of the head and knocking him off balance, then following up with an uppercut to the chin that staggered the giant Namekian away. That's it. Slug threw his whole body forwards in a somewhat awkward lunging motion that would have caused Frieza to break out into fits of giggles, if it weren't for the fact that the movement had launched a massive ki-enhanced shockwave that bore down on the frost demon like a tsunami, smashing him into the pavement. Sneering, Slug stomped up to Frieza, lying somewhat dazed on the ground, and brought his foot down heavily, completely obscuring the smaller fighter from view. You're fast, little man. But I've got you now, in this form, my raw strength is unmatched in all the universe. Ahahaha. What the? His eyes widened in disbelief. Despite every available gigantic muscle in his body forcing it down, his foot was slowly rising from the ground. Frieza was standing up straight, both arms straining against the enormous weight above his head. You really need to lose a few pounds, it's like lifting a good-sized country down here. Grr. Stay down, damn you. Slug stamped down again, but Frieza pushed back with all his strength, muscles burning. Not a chance. With that, he gave one final effort, heaving Slug up into the air. Throwing out his ki, the tyrant stopped in mid-flight, trembling with exertion. Frieza slowly rose up to face him. This calls for a cliché. Hey, Lord, I've only got one thing to say to you. What? Slug snapped, before deciding on impulse that he didn't care, and making another swipe at Frieza. His fist swung through an afterimage, and Frieza appeared behind him, a fully charged ball of crackling energy hovering above his outstretched fingertip. He'd evidently picked up the trick of rapidly preparing the planet-wrecking death ball technique from his uncle. You're fired. Frieza yelled, hurling the death ball straight into Slug's back. And you're sure he'll be alright? Zarbon asked. Gohan shielded his eyes from the flash of orange light that filled the sky back where Frieza and Slug were fighting. That spike of ki, it was Frieza's, not Slug's. Yeah. I think he'll be fine. It was broadcast on every channel, every station, every frequency. The message was wordless, almost silent, and therefore understandable in any language. Toes and Slug lay in a heap on the floor, one piled on top of the other, unmoving. The Super Saiyan stood with one foot on their backs, staring at the camera. He gave a brief smile, nodded to the camera, then left. The rest happened quite slowly, for a change, even the immediate loose ends taking several days to clear up. The Tree of Might was found shortly, now a smoking ruin. The effects were felt immediately, a planet-wide lightening of the spirit, a sense of optimism in the air, compounded by their unexpected salvation. Lord Slug was taken to a hospital and, along with his and To's surviving henchmen, kept sedated until a sufficiently durable holding cell could be built, so that when the Nemean people were self-sufficient enough to form a government they could officially put him on trial, which would mostly a symbolic gesture, a formal casting off of the old ways he represented. To's former subjects, without the influence of the Tree of Might, quickly set about organizing themselves, and within a matter of months the planet became the busy trading port it had once been. Those on Slug's half of the planet took a while longer to come out of their homes and begin normal life again, but eventually they all moved on. Nemea itself took on an air of mystique, becoming a tourist hotspot. Visit the Empire Museum. See the throne occupied by Frieza and Toz. Venture underground and see the very spot where Toz died. The Super Saiyan himself once trod the ground you walk on. Everybody ready to leave? Zarbon asked. Yup. Frieza's voice was somewhat muffled by the food in his mouth, currently halfway inside the fridge, scrounging for snacks. Yes, sir. Videl, leaning against the back wall of the pilot's cabin where Zarbon sat, gave a mock salute. She had a bandage around her leg, but appeared mostly recovered from her ordeal. Yeah, we're all good back here. Gohan called out. He'd been able to walk the streets largely unnoticed in his base form, the disguise completed by a change of clothes that seemed to fit in better with the urban style on the planet. He tossed something back and forth, from one hand to the other on his way to put it in cryostasis. A souvenir he'd taken from Nemia, potentially an object of great value. All right then, we have liftoff. Zarbon slowly increased power to the thrusters, lifting off gently and adjusting the various settings the ship needed to run smoothly on its own, before flicking over to autopilot. Stretching, he pushed himself out of the seat and ambled over to Gohan's cabin. Hey! Hey! He opened the door, seeing Gohan scribbling down notes with one hand, typing something up with the other, and occasionally pausing to sketch something. Hey, anybody home? Wah, oh, hey. Gohan looked up, bleary-eyed. Sorry, it's just, I learned a lot about alien culture there, not to mention the political history of the last few years. It's going in the book. Isn't it about key control, though? Zarbon asked. Well, yeah, but... Gohan sighed. There's a lot of stuff we know that most people don't. I was happy to let people just be oblivious, ignorance is bliss and stuff, you know. He shrugged. But now they want to know. Might as well tell them everything. Time travel. Super science. Okay, not everything. As much as is safe to make public. I don't want our families to be hounded by governments and religious fanatics, if I started writing about legendary alien prophecies, you know, and as for time travel, not only do I not know nearly enough about it to seriously discuss it, if people knew it was possible, if somebody figured it out, can you imagine the damage a selfish person with a time machine could do? Zarbon looked confused. Look, you think I'm dangerous? You think Frieza was dangerous? Compared to time travel in the wrong hands, I'm nothing. But you're giving the people the ability to turn their bodies into superweapons? You don't consider that dangerous, too? Gohan sighed. Look, this is going to sound really stupid, but imagine if everyone walked around with their eyes closed all the time, okay? Imagine nobody could see anything. Then I discovered that vision is a thing. I opened my eyes and used them, and suddenly I was so much better at just about everything than anybody else. It'd be selfish not to tell people about it. Ha! That's actually a pretty good analogy. Zarbon turned to leave. It explains that Hercule person, anyway. How'd you mean? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. It was several minutes later that Zarbon somewhat sheepishly reappeared in the doorway. Sorry. That conversation made me forget why I came to see you in the first place. Basically, where do you want to go next? I think we've run out of tyrants for you to depose, so the next planet will probably be a bit less of an adventure. I wouldn't count on that, Gohan muttered. Life has a way of throwing adventures at you whenever you're least ready for them. Anyway, can I see a map or something? What's around this bit of space, he finished lamely. Yeah, Bulma uploaded a map of the galaxy to the ship's computer, and I helped her fill it in, here we go. He tapped the console on Gohan's wall, bringing up the map. What be our heading, Captain? He joked. Gohan rolled his eyes. He's getting more human every day. Well, let me see. He examined the map closely for a few minutes. Planet-wide factories, trading posts, military bases, asteroid spaceports, backwards feudal worlds, crowded metropolises, desert planets, ice planets, jungle worlds, the choice was dizzying. Hey! He pointed out a system a few parsecs away. What about that one? It doesn't say anything about it. Oh, what's it called? Zarbon brought up the file. Alfheim. We've got no data at all, aside from physical geography. All that's known is it's fairly Earth-like, though be careful with anything flammable, there's high oxygen levels in the atmosphere. Only one expedition's ever been made there. They didn't come back, did they? Good guess. One of them made one last transmission, rambling about ghosts, but after that, nothing. There don't seem to be any significant mineral deposits there, so it's just been left alone since then. Gohan nodded. Interesting. Zarbon sighed. You want to go there, don't you? Would you believe I do? Seriously? Why? You know why. I'm curious. Well, don't be. Whatever killed the explorers is still. Look, if whatever it was strong enough to pose a threat to me, we'd have been able to feel its power all the way from Earth, all right? Gohan frowned. Remember why we're out here. We came to see what the situation was like, right? Fix things if they've gone wrong, we've done that. We took out the two worst despots, and the rest are running scared. Go team. What's your point? My point is that the other reason we set out was to explore. To boldly go. You know, discover valuable secrets. And you think you're just going to find that on some random planet? Like finding Dragon Balls on Namek? Or instant transmission on Yardrat? There's no arguing with you, is there? Nope. We're going. The planet, a deep shade of blue at this distance, somewhat darker than Earth or Namek, floated almost lazily into view on the monitor as they approached. So what are we expecting? Vidal asked. Ghosts? Frieza ventured hopefully. Well, there's probably some kind of life form. Zarbon agreed. To be seen as ghosts, they must be pretty strange. Gohan grinned. I'm counting on it. Take us down. The atmosphere was, as promised, breathable, though the high oxygen levels did give a slight heady taste to the air. The ground was smooth and worn down, gale force winds blew almost constantly. Frieza pulled his cloak closer around him, shivering at the cold. Hey, aren't you supposed to be able to survive in space? Gohan asked, frowning. This should be no problem for you. I guess I've just got used to Earth. Frieza shrugged. Its temperatures are pretty mild, as planets go. But still, Frost Demon, the clue is in the name. That's just a nickname, since the three most publicly known members of our species were Frieza, Cooler and Cold, you can see where it comes from. Vidal raised one eyebrow. So what's your species really called, then? I could try telling you, but the word, like much of our native language, is spoken at a frequency your ears couldn't pick up. Can we try and stay on track here? Zarbon barked. Well, we're on your mystery planet, Gohan, are you happy? Well, I thought we'd just take a look around, see if we can sense anything. I just picked a random spot, since no artificial structures showed up on the scan. He paused. Wait. I sense a disturbance. Vidal rolled her eyes. Look, I know it's a space voyage, but this is hardly the time for jokes. No, seriously. Did you guys? He swung his head back and forth, searching. There. Again. Some kind of weird key just appeared, then vanished. Yeah, I felt it too. The others gave nods of agreement. In the minute following, they detected 3 more of the brief energy signatures. Gohan's eyes slowly narrowed. Hold on, they're getting closer. Another. Yeah, definitely. And they're coming from over here. He leapt off to the right, taking great bouncing strides, surprising himself. Whoa, low gravity, anyway. He skidded to a halt, the others close behind. Right around here, this is where the last key appeared. I think we've found our ghosts, guys, Zarbon muttered. Vidal turned in a slow circle. Yeah, but I don't see any, there was an impact, a blur of movement, and she fell to the floor. Gohan spun, but there was no one there. Vidal. The remaining 3 clustered around her as she stood up. I see. Zarbon nodded. If it's some kind of predator, it makes sense, going for the one with the lowest energy first. Vidal tried not to take the remark personally. But why do you think it's a predator? Gohan asked, eyes scanning the surrounding area. Well, like you said, there aren't any artificial structures on this planet. Perhaps these ghosts are just a kind of wild animal with a naturally high power level and a weird ability to disappear. Yeah, what's up with that? Frieza grumbled, then blinked, almost tripping over his words. Hold on a second. What? There was a pause of several seconds, then Frieza turned to Zarbon. How the hell are you walking around a planet this cold in a t-shirt? What kind of question is, another impact, and Zarbon was floored. Watch it. Gohan stepped in front of his fallen friend, and this time he saw it, just barely. A receding shape, seeming to fade from existence. No, not fade, it didn't look like teleportation, or anything of that sort. Almost like. Hey. Frieza glanced around. Is it instant transmission? Is that what they're doing? No. Gohan shook his head. And it can't be just speed either, in the moment it struck, this time I got a glimpse, for that moment, its speed was slow enough for me to follow, no, it kind of looked like, it just stepped out of view. It just went in some direction we can't see. Could it be? Can't go back to the ship. Zarbon muttered as he rubbed his head. Too far now, we'd be making ourselves even bigger targets than we are. Have to think of something, why does this stuff always happen as soon as we go somewhere? I guess we just attract trouble. Vidal said, grinning bitterly. Okay, we're the only uninjured ones. Frieza almost whispered to Gohan. You're stronger than I am, they'll go for me next. Right. Something flashed in Gohan's mind, a fraction of a second before he saw it, but that fraction of a second was an aeon in fights like these. He turned on the spot, putting himself in front of Frieza and catching the incoming limb. Now, he truly saw the thing, chitin, spines, staring eyes widened in surprise, mouth hanging slightly open, light brown coloring with deep red highlights. Very much physical, flesh and blood. Not a ghost. But of course, as soon as it recovered from its surprise, it stepped away, its body simply withdrawing, in some indescribable way, from the world they could see. At the same time, a second strode into existence, and something hit Gohan in the back, knocking him to his knees. Frieza jumped away, raising his guard. Don't worry, guys, I got this. He was quickly proven wrong by 3 of the creatures simultaneously. He managed to keep his balance, spinning away and jumping into the air. The low gravity took him and his next attacker by surprise, causing it to miss him and temporarily expose itself. Frieza, still hanging in the air above it, charged up energy in one hand. I've got you. Wait, Zarbon warned, but it was too late. Frieza fired, but the creature had already vanished, and the beam smacked into the ground. The explosion seemed to expand far too quickly, building into a gigantic column of flame and engulfing Frieza, sending him tumbling to the ground, still billowing smoke. Damn it, I warned you. Zarbon muttered. The atmosphere is oxygen-heavy, it's flammable. Gohan stood up, breathing heavily. Okay, they're not as fast as me, I have that. And, I'm noticing a pattern. It's a fantastic technique, this disappearing attack, but, I think I've got it figured out. He stood still, eyes closed, slowing his breathing. Okay, come and get me.